Well, Namaskar everyone. My name is Astro. Today I'll share with you about Jupiter placement in the ninth house. What all results one should expect when Jupiter is there in the ninth house, as well as I'll also talk about what results your younger sibling will be getting, what results your mother and father will be getting with this placement, and what about your elder sibling. Just by Jupiter placement in the ninth house, we will understand what all results your relatives will be getting with it. So, if Jupiter is placed in the ninth house, well, what is Jupiter? Jupiter is the planet of wisdom. Jupiter shows your spirituality. Jupiter shows somebody who's a teacher. It is a planet which signifies a person who is guide to others. So if you go to somebody for a guidance, then that person will be considered your Jupiter. Your teachers, your gurus who guide you and direct you to take the right path are the ones who are Jupiter, who are represented by Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of wisdom. And Jupiter shows your fortune, your luck. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. Jupiter is positivity. Your optimism is shown by Jupiter. So what happens when this planet comes in your ninth house? Ninth house talks about your gurus, your teachers. Your long distance travels are shown by ninth house. Ninth house is the planet of spirituality. Ninth house also talks about higher learning. When you go abroad for studies or you do higher learning like masters, PhD is shown by ninth house. Ninth house is also the house which is seventh from your third house. That is the house of your younger sibling spouse. So your younger sibling, whosoever he will get married to, that person, if Jupiter is placed in the ninth house, that your younger sibling spouse will be very spiritual in nature. Okay, and that person, the spouse of your younger sibling, will be very spiritual, as well as she will be a renowned personality with the Jupiter in the ninth house placement. Also, your mother health, because from fourth house, Jupiter, fourth house, which is the house of your mother, ninth house becomes sixth house, and sixth house talks about illnesses. So when Jupiter is placed here, your mother illnesses will be very less. Like your mother will get cured very easily with this placement of Jupiter, and she will hardly go through any disease, and even if she goes through any disease or problem, then she will get cured very easily with the placement of Jupiter in the ninth house. When this also talks about your father, because 10th house is your father and Jupiter is coming in the 12th from 10th. So 12th house is the house of your father's expense. You will see with this placement of Jupiter, your father expenses will be very much reduced. He will spend money very, he will be able to manage his money, because 12th house also shows losses. So his losses, his over expensive, he will not do over expense in his life. His losses will be covered with this placement of Jupiter. He will be able to save money and manage his money very well with this placement. From fifth house, which is the house of your elder sibling, your firstborn child, Jupiter is coming at fifth house. So fifth house is the house of habits. So your elder sibling will always have good habits. His habits will be very good. He will be a routine follower and he will be very spiritual in nature. So what all results one should expect, the native should expect with this placement? The native will be doing long distance travels with this placement. He will also be doing masters or higher learning he will be doing with this placement, like masters, PhD, when Jupiter is placed here, because from this placement of Jupiter it is aspecting your first house, third house and the fifth house. So all these houses will help the Jatak, the native, to understand or to do higher learning. Then since it is aspecting your first house, so that higher learning and wisdom he will be able to imbibe in his life. He will be able to grab that higher learning very conveniently. Moreover, since it is aspecting your third house, so communicating that higher learning will become very easier for this Jatak, for this native. And since it is aspecting your fifth house is also the house of your creativity. your intellectual, your intelligence. So all these combinations will help the person ultimately to rise in the field of education. And since ninth house is itself the house of wisdom, so this Jatak will be very wise. This Jatak will be doing long distance travel, and those long distance travels will be very fruitful for him. So higher learning he can do higher learning in abroad also. So also when it is aspecting your first house from his fifth aspect, when Jupiter aspects your first house is the house of the native mind. First house is native mind, native thinking, the soul, what he thinks about himself. So when it is aspecting your first house, it is making the Jatak very positive person, very positive thinking person. He will be a very wise person. He will always talk good about others. He is the person who will always calculate his plans, then only he will implement it. He will not be a irrational person. He will take logical decisions in life. He is very wise with this placement. And moreover, first house also, this aspect on first house helps a person to think positive about others and about himself, as well as it will help him to remain away from any disease. If any disease comes, then he will get cured very comfortably, very easily, very early from any disease. Then it is aspecting your third house also. So third house is a house of your communication. So the native will be able to communicate his ideas very confidently, very conveniently. Whatever the learnings he will be doing, he will, be able to communicate those ideas. He will be able to, make the relations with his younger sibling will be very cordial. His younger sibling will always come to him for knowledge, for directions, and he'll be maintaining that relation with his younger siblings, and he will guide others with his and he will be very courageous, because third house is also the house of courage. So his courage will help him to rise in his life. Moreover, with its ninth aspect, Jupiter is aspecting your fifth house. So fifth house is the house of your firstborn or first born child. So when Jupiter is aspecting your first child or your firstborn, your child, it will help the person to get a good childbirth. These people will be able to have kids very easily in their life, very conveniently. They won't face much problems in the childbirth. Moreover, their first child will be very wise with this placement of Jupiter, and he will be the person who will be a routine follower, and he will always have good habits in his life. He will carry those good habits in his life. So guys, this is how you need to understand the placement of Jupiter in the ninth house. So if you like the video, kindly subscribe the channel and press the bell notification. So thank you all. Have a nice day. Namaskar.